I'm Lauren Sterling, and this is Ordinary Grit, the podcast where I talk to ordinary people who have overcome and are doing amazing things, because your story has power. Ordinary Grit. I'm so excited to share with you a conversation with my brother. Not the typical, my brother's kind of silly, and this is not your typical conversation with Danny, but this is important. This is a great conversation about what the journey of infertility has looked like for them for the last several years. And it is the precursor to some really crazy good things that are happening. So I wanted to get his side, his view, his perspective, and it's really good. So please enjoy this conversation with my brother, Danny Malone. Are you an Ordinary Grit fan? No pressure.
I have listened to, I think, every episode.
Yeah? You think?
So I listened to the most recent one last week. Lisa and I were listening to. So yeah,
Okay.
we are
Okay.
fans. We actually like you. It's kind of interesting.
Hey, that is interesting. No, I like that. I like that. Okay, so that's sort of the point. Like, I enjoy you, and your story is going to be somewhat parallel to mine. We grew up together. We're not going to bore everybody with all of that, but I think that there's value in talking about some of the things that you and our family have been through in the last several years from a different perspective. So I want to have your wife or both of you on here. We've talked about that 1,000 times. So we will get there someday. But it kind of came to me, I don't know, like last week, I think I was like, okay, I know we want to get this story out, and I don't want to wait. I got impatient, which is why we're not sitting in the same room, which I'd really prefer. But I thought you have from the man in the story, and just being my brother. So we don't have to go, back to whatever 1980 something. What'd you say? You'll do it?
I don't remember that far.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, no, we kind of blocked some things out, but let's just kind of talk about where you think the story starts. Like, where we're trying to go.
So, okay. Well, Lisa and I'll start with her because she's way cooler and better than me. We started dating. Is that where we want to start? Right there?
That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go back there. Lisa and I started dating. I fell in love with her very quickly in 2013. She knew it. I obviously knew it, but she was just kind of like, all right, this guy's like way more into me than maybe I am. And even before that, we were friends and knew each other. And I was like, oh yeah, I could date her. And she was like, no way. So anyway, in 2013, she was living in New York, and we met up one night randomly. And from that point on, it was like, done. She's mine. And
how long before you got married? How long was that?
Well, we were engaged 2 years later, but she was still living in New York because it was the end of 2013. We started dating. And then she moved home in September of 2014 from New York City. And then
I didn't realize you dated that long before you got engaged, but okay.
Yeah, it was like 9 or 10 months.
Oh, okay. Not 2 years.
No.
Okay.
It was almost a full year.
Okay.
And so 2015, we were engaged. And 2016, which we would both agree was way too long of an engagement, we married in 2016. And then Hayden came in 2017. So it was all like boom, 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 like kind of our plan, like had it all figured out. Like we knew, like, all right, I want her to marry me. We want a son. We are super weird and had Hayden's name picked out like 2 weeks into dating. Like, I'm not kidding. It wasn't even like it wasn't Thanksgiving of 2013. And we were like, yeah, so what do you think about kids' names? And we are weird and we know it. And probably more than anybody. And everybody thinks Lisa's normal. Let's be real. She's the weird one of us.
She has to be weird. She lives with you and likes you, but yeah.
But, and so then Hayden's born October of 2016. And simple, like we got off the contraceptives and we're like, boom, let's do this, baby.
Made the plan, had a baby, check.
And he was 2 weeks early. I mean, he was The labor part of it was a pain, but otherwise simple. So then comes along and uh, I don't know. We tried to get pregnant for again. Well, we tried not to for a really long time after Hayden, and we're like, no, no, not ready, not ready, not ready. And then finally, 2020, we're like, okay, let's try to do this. Um, we tried for I don't know 7 8 months and to no avail. I mean, it was just
So 2020, it's like, I mean, COVID already.
oh
It's
yeah, it
you're home
was.
anyway, so let's
We
get
we
pregnant. Yeah.
we started I think right in the thick of it, like almost like August of 2020, and
Okay.
then and this is right after. And I didn't realize this until I started looking at the timeline. This is right when Scott was diagnosed with
Right at the
cancer.
same time. Yep.
And so you and I were kind of differently, but parallelly going through different levels of grief. And um,
Because you had your first miscarriage somewhere in that time. When
yes, it was technically uh, in, yeah, it was 2020 at the end. It was September of 2020, I think, or December. Um, yeah, yeah, it was October. What was it? Can you edit this out?
I I know when it was. No, it's okay. The reason I was asking is because it was towards the end of 2020.
It was. It was
We're
September.
we're in the like thick of cancer treatments
Yep.
and like really getting hard. And mom and I don't know why we ended up, I mean, we can obviously see each other in real life. I still lived in the same town as you guys at the time, but we ended up in a parking lot in our own cars. And so we're like side by side and we're both sobbing. And I remember thinking, this has got to be so hard for mom because what I was trying to fight and what you guys were trying to fight was happening at the same time. So I
Well,
do
I remember mom
remember.
having conversations with me, being like, "Gosh, I wish." And I mean, mom's a fixer. She wants
Yeah.
things done, and she wants it fixed, and she's going to do everything in her power to make it happen. And I mean, obviously, you want that.
And it's
But
action related, and there's so much of that that there's no action to take. You
yeah,
can't. You can't fix it for your kids. You can't fix it for yourself. So okay.
well, so that's September. Lost it that baby in September. Can't like went in for I don't know a checkup because there was some signs showing that that we were
Something wasn't
in the
right.
process something was not correct. They had us come back a week later. Heartbeat was still not good and went back a week later and there was no heartbeat. Devastating obviously. uh, it's hard, but we don't realize we had no idea the road we were on.
Yeah.
Moving on from there.
So
Uh,
what are the feelings like both sides? Like super hopeful because it's one and lots of people have them or already really hard and you found yourself already really like what does that look like at that time?
well, at that time, it's. I mean, there were some days we wanted to throw ourselves in bed and never come out. There was some where, I mean, luckily, I mean, and literally Hayden being around made everything better. Like if we would have just like sent him off to mom or dad or mom and dad's and just lived, we would have been a mess. He made everything better. I mean, just knowing, and I think that was God throwing it in there, being like, "Hey, you've got this dude here, and he's pretty awesome. Like,
Yeah.
keep it together." And that was not easy. I mean, Lisa's a trooper, but it's devastating. It's one of those things that, and I knew nothing about it. Like before this, I knew nothing. I mean, she had some friends that, had lost a baby here and there, and then there was one friend that now we're super tight with them that have lost a lot, and our stories are kind of similar to that now. But yeah, so then she had to have that DNC, and that is that was something that you don't really know what to expect at that point. I mean, it's you go in there and you're basically, cleaning out a baby, and for us that was absolutely, and they call it something that you just don't want that you
Yeah.
don't want to be associated with that. And for us, it was hard to get past. And it was 2020. So here I am sitting in the truck for 3 hours while she's in there by herself because I couldn't go in there.
Yep.
And so she's like talking to me through this, and actually going back to the doctor's appointments. Lisa went in for this doctor's appointment, and we're like we had to FaceTime. I couldn't
Yeah.
be with her. And so the first one, we're like thinking, this is going to be great. It's going to be our second baby. We're going to see the baby in there, and everything's going to be great. Well, she's calling me, and I can see it on her face. She's crying, and I'm in the car,
Yep.
a couple hundred yards away, like waiting, and like
Yep.
hopefully, and I'm like, okay, I can't hold you, like I can't throw
Nope.
my arm around you. I can't like eat. I mean, I wouldn't be able to say the right thing anyway, but I can't say anything.
Can't even be. You just can't be. You can't be present.
It was
Yep.
that part, and I that was hard. That was hard for
Yep.
her. That was hard for me. And then getting dressed and then walking out to the car, I feel like there's a different level of like, I don't know if it's shame or guilt or what, in the woman. I mean, for me, there wasn't a baby in me.
Well,
I was
and you
proud of
don't
it, but
have this. I don't know why we feel like it's like all we were made to do was be a woman. Um, was to do these womanly things. I don't know if some of that is just the enemy also jacking with a woman, but
big
I mean
time.
there is something about us that struggles with, yeah, with feeling like it's your job. And I we haven't really sat down and talked about this like this, because I didn't necessarily, I parallelly was walking a really similar, gosh, is more than one occasion where I have PTSD from sitting in a parking lot, losing it in a few of the instances, not sure that I was going to get to talk to him again.
Yeah.
Not sure that yeah, that I had said all the things. So yeah, like there is something about that season that was so isolating and so unhealthy and so fearful.
One
So much fear.
and there's, I mean, still to this day, there's PTSD for us. I mean, I took her and dropped her off that day for the ultrasound and found out the baby had no heartbeat. The same door that I dropped Scott off and had to lift him out into a chair. It's the exact same place.
I hate that place.
I know. And I mean, and there's many, unfortunately, there's many places like that over the course of the last five
I
years of
know.
our journey. But
Yeah.
it has been interesting. Because in our parallels are super strange, completely different things, but going through grief at the same time, and just kind of us here, you here, and then we're just kind of traveling along on this same awful road. But also in a weird, strange way. I mean, I think it brought us together closer. And I also think that, I mean, I know for a fact that we grew closer to Jesus throughout all this because truly felt his arms wrapped around us numerous times. Um, I mean, like I said, in October, I think the very early October, we had the DNC. And then we started seeing Scott's health start to go up a little bit. And then come March, it's right back down to where it was. And then obviously he got to go see Jesus. Um,
March of 21.
that, yep. And then we didn't do anything all the rest of 21 as far as baby stuff goes. We just
You
kind of
didn't try any.
didn't necessarily try. We were trying, but we didn't, to no avail. I mean, there was gaps where we could not do it, and I think part of it was stress. I think part of it was fear. I think that there's a fear of like, gosh, is this going to happen again? And it's almost like a certain period amount of time goes by where you just kind of forget. Oh no, we could try it again,
Hmm.
and there's just you kind of forget about it, I guess.
Okay.
But
So no pregnancies though.
not
Between,
in 21.
okay.
And then 22 was a gut punch after gut punch after gut punch. I think we were pregnant three times in 2022. First one being in January, um, or maybe pregnant in December, but had lost the baby in January. So we may have been pregnant in 21 at the very end. Um, but we were actually on vacation with mom and dad and the kids in Branson. And Lisa just wasn't right the whole time. I mean, it was a mess. It was hard, and she just knew. There's something inside you guys that just you weigh so much more aware of your all's body. Where we're just kind of like, all right, whatever, I'm good. I'm walking around, I'm good.
Mhm.
But it's just a different world, and she knew. And so
She knew she was
January,
pregnant or she knew something was wrong.
I think we knew we were pregnant at that point, and then, or maybe that was I think I'm getting a year ahead. I think it was 22 at the end. Um,
Okay.
but anyway, 22 we got pregnant after 14 months. That's what it was. We had 14 months of trying, and then at that point,
Trying like not preventing it, but just
not
like,
preventing, just kind of like whatever God wants. Like we're gonna do this, and just it was the first one we had was a short one. It was like maybe 6 weeks along, and pregnancy test was super faint. And we were like, well, whatever it says, if it's just a little bit of line, you're still pregnant, whatever. Well, a couple weeks later, no more positive tests, and she knew. She knew at that point that that we weren't going to have it, and so doctor then confirmed another miscarriage. That time, she did not have to do a DNC, but it naturally wasn't would miscarried. Um,
what are the feelings like at that point? Because we've lost one, we've done the DNC thing, we've had a long time. So like you said, you have moments where you forget or you've maybe allowed yourself to heal enough to hope. You're
it's
not
one of
completely
those.
cold to that.
It is a daily battle to trust and just to move it and be like, okay, I can't do anything else. And like literally, we've seen functional doctors, we've seen every test in the book. I mean, for me, there's like one, but for her, like every test in the book, seen functional doctors, takes anything and everything. Was eating celery juice, so drinking like literally juicing a celery,
Hmm.
not just one. I'm talking like we
Yeah.
we would end up with 8 stalks of celery,
Hmm.
and she'd be sitting there juicing them.
Hmm.
So I mean, going to like
She was willing to try anything.
desperate measures, yes.
Hmm.
And so we were doing anything and everything just to try and like, how do we keep this baby in here? I mean, we did it once with Hayden. It was simple,
Hmm.
and it was just crazy to us and a little bit mind blowing, and also a little bit like we finally got to a point where it was more freeing just to know that we have no control. Like it didn't matter what we did, and that's where we finally got to is it didn't matter what we did. Like this is on him. Let him do his thing, and then we can just sit back. Um,
So that's somewhat freeing, but is there an inability to hope at that point?
there is a lot of fear involved, yes. So it's one of those that you just have to be able to sit back. But and I'll talk on my side of it. For me, my mood was based off of hers. Like I would just kind of check it out, feel out the situation, like check the scene, make sure everything's safe.
Hmm.
Um, but it was up and down.
But if
There,
she was
there was
upset,
If
you were
she was
upset.
upset, I knew that I had to either step it up, or if we were to get, if it was just us, we could just kind of mope in it for a little while. And sometimes we had to do that, where we just had to punch some pillows or cry it out. And when Hayden was here, I mean, obviously we weren't showing him a lot of that. He knew when mom was sad, but he also made us not so sad, which was extremely helpful. But the feeling of it was very lost feeling, especially with people who enjoy kind of controlling things a little bit. And when she felt like she was doing everything in her power to control it, and it still wasn't working. And like you said earlier, you feel like that's like your purpose. Your purpose is to house children and birth them. And she felt like she was failing.
And I think
And
maybe you don't think your whole life that's my only purpose. I think it's something about when you can't.
yeah,
When like it's probably a little bit of a control issue with being told no,
yeah,
somewhat, because I don't think that she has this unhealthy view of who she is across the board, or you don't, or but I think there's something about being told no, or feeling like I did this a little bit with adopting the kids. Through the process of adopting them, it took like almost 2 years. And so I just was like, well, I can't get pregnant because there are countries that if you go there and go to adopt, then they won't let you have your kids. And so I'm like, that's fine. It's fine. If these are, I had Lainey, and if that's it, then great. This is obedience. And, but then I got the 5 kids, and then you get a little like comfortable and you're like, okay, well, so what's one more? 7?
mhm,
Like, let's try for 8. And that wasn't as easy. And
yeah,
I had a moment of like, you're kidding me, God. Like, I just did what you asked me to do, and I can't have another baby. There's a little bit of a brat in you that's like, what do you mean? What do you mean that I don't deserve this? I'm not owed this. So I got a little taste of, well, why can't I? I
yeah,
could before. And I'm not saying it's all rebellion. I'm saying there's just a flesh and a
yeah.
humanity in there that
Well,
doesn't understand why it wouldn't be easier.
well, and I think part of your story with adoption always had it in my mind that our plan was like, all right, we're gonna have two on our own, and then maybe we'll adopt a third. So in my head, I always knew that adoption could be an option for us. I
Well, it's
wanted
so
it,
much a part of our story.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Lisa was not on board with that, so
Okay.
just didn't necessarily feel it like I did. I felt like, this is something that I've wanted to do, and she's like, all right, well, we'll pray about it. We'll figure out what we're supposed to do. After the first miscarriage, she was still like, nope. After the second one is when her eyes kind of were like, okay, then I'll see what he says, and she became open to it at that point. Um, and then right when she did that is when she then got pregnant again.
Yeah.
And I think that was like March. This was the second pregnancy. So really quick after not being able to get pregnant for over a year, and then being pregnant twice in the same year.
Hmm.
And so that one was March and made it to 8 weeks. Not a single sign showing otherwise, but still going into that doctor's appointment, there's still some like, all right, what are we going to see today? Are we going to see the one we saw a couple years ago with Hayden? Or are we going to see nothing? We get in there and there was no heartbeat at all. And that was the third. Um,
With no warning, though, she wasn't doing anything
Zero.
that made you
No, this was just an 8 week. Like I think we had called the doctor and been like, hey, when can we like get
how
some
soon can we come
checkups
in
on
here?
this? Because technically they will not, this is what they told us, they won't send us to a specialist until you have three. So once you have three miscarriages, then that opens a little bit of doors.
Yeah.
um so for us, we're
It's
like,
also confusing
oh yeah,
because her body had done certain things with one of them, and then this time, and so you get to where you can't trust your instincts or your
well,
body like you thought you could.
and I would say every single one has been different.
Yeah.
I mean, she had with Hayden again, super easy, and then lots of signs with the first two, and this one zero, and then I guess we'll go on to the next one. But then we met with the reproductive team, I think at KU Med, and did all sorts of tests on Lisa, and we're like, that this finally we were like, all right, well, we'll get some answers, and then we go in there and we're like, no answers.
Mm.
Okay. So then I had some testing done. Everything was fine. Um,
So with her,
then
you when you say no answers, can't find any reason why this wouldn't work.
everything looked good.
Yeah.
Everything. And then they did all sorts of blood work, different samples, looking at different things. Went in and did looked inside her uterus and everything else in there, and without getting too detailed, and it was
Yeah.
everything was right. Everything's good, and every single time it's been that way. So, um,
Okay.
we just recently have gotten answers on some things, but um, then we get pregnant for the third time in 2022 in September, the end of September. Went in there at that point. We're with KU Med, and so they're like taking care of us earlier, which was great. We went in for 6 weeks and had everything looked great. We're like bawling our faces out and like, oh my gosh, like haven't seen this in a long time. Like this is cool. 6 weeks, you know. Then we go in for again for well, we're scheduled to go in at the 10-week mark, and 2 days before that, she starts seeing some signs. Go in, no heartbeat. So just all abrupt. Everything was just kind of like, and the baby was measuring small. So like right after that 6 week scan.
Hmm.
So then at this point, all right, we're like, we've done this 4 times. Like we're done. 3 times this year. 2022 was just like, oh my gosh. So we were done. We're gonna adopt. So then we jump into the adoption. That's in December of I feel like it's before that. November, I think, of 22, somewhere around there. And we're like jumping in like right then. We met with a lady thinking that we would just go sell ourselves. We're dressed nice. We didn't have Hayden with us, but we had pictures just to make sure, hey, he's a good looking kid. Like we can do this. He actually does behave. And so we're going around and trying to just sell ourselves a little bit. And we get in there and we're like, this is not what they're looking for. Like they don't want us to sell ourselves. They are, I don't know what they're trying to do, but it was, we were both kind of sat in the car afterwards and we're like, okay, how do you feel about it? And we were both just kind of like, I don't know how I felt.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those where you went in thinking one thing and came out and your emotions and feelings were the complete opposite.
Less clear than you could have even imagined.
It was, we knew, but the thing was, leading up to this, we knew we were supposed to adopt. Like we knew, like God had said it, and we're just like, okay, we've got it. And then we do
And
this.
she's
And
on board for the first time.
correct.
Yeah.
And then like really on board after. I mean, we started really she jumped in March or April basically and was like, okay, I'm gonna really dig into this, and prayed about it for the next 6 or so months. Obviously lost a baby in there too, so that made things like, all right, I can't do this anymore. And so then we're like, all right, we're supposed to adopt. And we come around to the middle of June of 23, and we're like, we both come together at the same time. And I'm seeing these emails about embryo adoption, and I'm just like, I don't know. It seems very odd. Like I just don't know how I feel. And at the time, we didn't know if it was like, me and her, and it wasn't working, or and Hayden was a miracle, or if it was a genetic thing in there. We've come to know now that it's not an issue, that it's just every once in a while, and in a woman's body, it just doesn't work, and that doctors don't have answers.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, we adopted embryos in June of 23.
Well, and how did that happen? Because you're hearing about it, and then what happened?
Well, yeah, that's okay. So we start just kind of coming together, and not really. I started thinking about it. She started thinking about it. We're seeing things about it. And then we're each researching on our own without bringing it to each other's attention. And then finally, or one of us, I think she comes to me and she's like, hey, so what do you think about embryo adoption? And I was kind of like, okay, I was supposed to ask you that. And so then we had that conversation, and we're just kind of like, okay. So then we call we had a adoption consultant that worked with us through all this stuff, and did a really awesome job, and was like, we could call her at any point and she would help us. And she's like, well, it's funny you guys ask, where we just started this program. And so basically for the first time in 3 or 4 years, things started to kind of line up in our favor, which in our plan wasn't working. So things started to line up a little bit, and she's like, well, let's see what we can do. Um and actually doing the adoption thing, if I can step back, just the regular adoption, we still are in their system and have gotten zero phone calls, and we've done the whole thing. Like,
Hmm.
we've home studied, we've done the whole thing, which was good because then the embryo came along and we were able to just jump right in. We
Yeah.
didn't have to do much prep, we didn't have to do anything, and then from that point we were in. And
So how
it's
go back to that part though. How did that happen?
which part?
How
The
did you get introduced to embryos?
Okay, so that this part is where stuff gets wild, and is only divine intervention, because it's not something that we could orchestrate. But like I said earlier, Lisa has a good friend that has gone through some serious loss similar to ours, and lost a bunch of babies, and had all sorts of testing, exact same situation as Lisa, and in doing that, has been on social media and is more of kind of has a big
That's kind of a
following
network.
on
Yeah.
there. Yeah, she has a good infertility following or whatever. And good friend with Lisa, went to high school with her, and this person, uh, somebody had reached out to her about, like, hey, they went through IVF, they had all these embryos. And the way that it works, like, you get so many embryos. Some people get, one or two, some people get a dozen. And basically those are your options to have babies. Well, if you get 10, 11, 12 of them, then and you don't want 10 or 11 or 12 kids, then you have a choice. You can either discard or dispose of those embryos, or you can give them up for adoption, or technically you can give them to science. So there's three things, which if you give them to science, basically you're disposing of them. They're not going to be
Hmm.
around. um and so this person, initially, they were like, this couple, they said, we're not going to do this. Like, we don't want anybody else to carry our babies. We don't want anybody to have that option. We don't want to, our kids to know that they have siblings, somewhere else. Completely understandable. I get it. But every year you have to pay for those embryos to remain frozen. And they had already had their third kid, and they knew that they didn't want any more. And so they got to a crossroads where they were going to have to start paying again for that.
Or make a decision.
And she both of them actually reached out to Kelly, and they were just like, uh, is this something that we,
Do you know
is this
anybody?
an
Or
option? Is
yeah.
this, like, how, talk me through, what I should do. They knew that she was a Christian and a believer, and knew that had been through a wild ride over the last few years. And they jumped in, and her friend Kelly just said, I think I have somebody in mind, because Lisa had just talked to her about all this,
Yeah.
and basically was like, hold on a minute, and then instantly called Lisa.
Yeah.
And to parallel that a little bit, that night we were going to have to pay, like, literally that evening. We were sitting on our bed on our computer. I was in the shower when Kelly had called Lisa, and they was talking to Lisa about this whole thing, and we had our computers on our bed because we were going to have to pay this large sum to the adoption, to the domestic adoption.
Yeah.
And we were like, all right, are we going to do this or not? I mean, you're talking a large sum of money. And within
Get this phone
minutes,
call.
the phone call comes, and Kelly's like, all right, I don't know where you guys are at. And we had just started talking about embryo adoption, and we're like in and starting to get all this figured out and situated. And then, boom, the phone call comes, and we're like, okay. So we couldn't have orchestrated that. So I think that this is at least giving us some sort of confirmation of what we're supposed to be doing. Because I'm going to be honest, over the last few years, it has been hard to decipher between feelings and God,
Yeah.
and then you get other people's opinions coming in, and
Yep.
people. I want my friends to tell me their position on a lot of things, and a lot of times they do, but sometimes they say things that they don't mean to hurt that do hurt,
Yeah.
and it's one of those where we know what we felt, we
Yeah.
know what we feel, we know what we've heard, and when things started to line up, we're our feelings were nowhere involved, and we've been very emotional, but we did not let our emotions,
Right.
decide some of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole story with
Yeah.
that, and so anyway, we ended up pursuing that couple, and Kelly got us in contact with them, and um, at first, the husband was absolutely not like, no, I will meet with you guys, but absolutely not. And I haven't sat on their side of this, but also I completely understand.
Yeah.
And they were both emotional while we're eating chips and salsa at a Mexican restaurant, but it was hard. I mean, really, we're going in there. Lisa and I were kind of sitting there, and we're just kind of waiting. And I think we were there first, and we just kind of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, how are we going to do this? Are we supposed to sell ourselves? Like, are
Mm-hmm.
we just like, how does it? And we prayed before, and we're just like, we're just gonna, God, you carry this. Let the conversation be yours and nothing else. And because really, I mean, the goal is we want Him to be heard through this, and not us. And
Yeah.
that
It's
by the end
vulnerable.
of it,
It's scary. I mean, it is a strange, like, hey, we can't have a baby and we heard you might be able to help us. And
yeah,
it's a hard, really vulnerable, really exposing conversation.
yeah. Well, and just the fact that they were in the exact same area
Hmm.
of the world as
Hmm.
us, and calling her and doing all this is
Yeah.
just more confirmation. But anyway, after the conversation, they were like, well, we were up there for a couple hours, and had good conversation, had really like deep conversation. Obviously, I mean, when you're talking about this, it's very serious, but I'm not overly serious all the time. So there was some Chandlerisms from me, because
Yeah.
that's what I do when I get awkward. I turn into Chandler. But it was good though. I mean, and at the end of it, we're like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. If they want us to do this, the great. If they don't, then we're gonna do what God asked us to do anyway.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly how we left it. They said they would reach out in the next few, like once they got things figured out. I don't think there was a timeline on it or anything, and we didn't really want to put one on them. But then in September, October-ish of that year of 23, they decided shortly after that they wanted us to have their embryos, which was awesome, super cool. They actually came over to our house and kind of wanted to talk to us in person about it, which we were both kind of like, all right, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Like,
Hmm.
do they want
Hmm.
to, just give us the news face to face, or so they came
But it
over.
has gravity. And so I can appreciate that it was- it's weighty. And so they wanted to look at you. And the world sucks at that these days. So I'm grateful for that.
I agree, and they are an amazing family and have been just awesome to us throughout this story. Um, and then so we adopt those embryos and go through the whole thing, and
And nothing's like super fast. You don't like get embryos and get to like transfer the next day.
Oh no, it's
Nothing
never
is
that.
fast. So
No, no.
everything is like a little bit torturous
Well, and
on
basically the way that it works is basically we are doing IVF now,
them. Mm-hmm.
just with somebody else's
Mm-hmm.
embryo.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ton of prep work with that. Shots. I mean, I was having to give Lisa shots every morning for a period. I don't know how long that was. Probably 6 weeks before a transfer.
Yeah.
So you're talking January. We started that.
Of
After
23.
no, January of 24
Okay. So
is
we're
when
here.
that transfer
All right.
was. Yeah. So we're
Okay.
we're we're creeping on
Now.
today.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, we have a transfer uh, in March. So I'm right in the thick of baseball season. Like it's just started. And so I'm working 12-hour days. Lisa's super stressed at work because it was difficult there at the time. And so transfer day is early March, March 7th. I think that 10 days later or something, she has to go back and or take a pregnancy test. And here we are thinking like, all right, okay, maybe this will work. And then we get a negative pregnancy test.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, like all this time, all this money, which whatever. I keep telling her all the time. I mean, money is this stuff is not cheap, but money is whatever. It is what it is. I mean, I'm a teacher, so I'm loaded, but um, but
The
no, it's
money
just one of
part is
those.
stressful though too.
It is stressful,
So
and in a place where you can't be stressed.
yeah,
I
right.
mean, and that's hard. I mean, her
You need
job at the
every
time,
environment that you're in to be peaceful and on clouds, and
yeah,
it's
which is what
wild.
they actually on transfer day they were like, all right, you have to chill the night before. The next day, you're going to put on your favorite movies. You're going to lay down. You're going to just laugh. So put on your funny stuff. I am really funny. And so I made
You are her
myself be
entertainment.
around all the time.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
And so I don't know if that was the issue or not, but it was
probably.
negative transfer day or negative pregnancy test, which was crushing. It was basically another loss for us. And if you're just putting up, wins and losses, the L column is dominating us right now. We are the Chiefs of 2010, and like just bad news and uh just kind of crushing. I mean, and for me, I mean, I am like I'm trying to pick her up off the floor. I mean, it's hard.
Meanwhile, you two are crushed or discouraged in your own way. Maybe it's different, but trying to pick her up off the floor. But really, is anybody around you guys able to? No, I doubt we're carrying it very well with you. We don't understand. I mean, looking back at the timeline, I'm like, gosh, I had to have really sucked in 20 and 21, but I don't know that I've been better a whole lot since because it's hard to, man, people get sick of the sad stories. Do you feel some of that like there's nobody helping carry the load?
I don't. I wouldn't say nobody.
Okay.
I mean, I have a really good group of guys that one guy especially has called me up and just been like, dude, like let's go have lunch because you need to just chill out.
Mm-hmm.
And Lisa's got a group of girls
Mm-hmm.
that
Good friends.
are fantastic and sometimes don't always have the right thing to say, but they do pray and they do, get in community. And don't sell yourself short. I call you if I need something, and you are always the first to pray. You're always the first one I ask to pray, because I know you will. And mom's the same way. I know that mom is one of those that she's got our back, like probably a little to a fault. Like well, anyway,
Yeah.
she's great, and our parents are great. We're very fortunate, but we have good friends that have helped keep us grounded a little bit. But Also, it is one of those things where I think people are like, why are you still doing this? Like, and trust me, I've been there. I mean, to a point where, I mean, we at this point, I think have well, but lost four babies and then a transfer that didn't go through. And it's devastating. It's just, it's crushing. It's one of those where you just don't know. It's like you don't know that you have emotions until you go through something so emotional. And it's hard. I mean, and it's we started realizing that we had to start figuring things out a little bit when it started affecting Hayden. It started affecting the ways that like Hayden would be like, "Is mom sad? How's everything today?" It's like, dude, you're six. Like, chill out.
Yeah. Ugh.
I know I'm not gonna let myself do this. Anyway, I don't know, brown cow. Um,
No, it's your
and
kids' emotions are a whole different thing. Your spouse's feelings. There's a lot of pieces to really grief. Um, the death of the dream, the death of the plan, the ease, the comfort of it should go, it should be. I think there's the death of the should be.
yeah,
Um, because that's so much I think of even our grief is it just is never supposed to have gone this way. And so supposed to, I mean, we just weren't supposed to die. We were just supposed to live in paradise with
yeah,
the Lord. And he had perfection down, you know? And so the should be, the death of the should be is hard. And so what you think should be for Hayden, which
yeah,
sometimes you have to, get out of your own head about what you think should be for Hayden and what I think should be for my kids
yeah,
because God knows better and he is parenting them better. And I mean, gosh, I'm preaching to the choir. Because you want the should be for them. They deserve, we can do all that. 37 times over. But
yeah.
so okay, it's affecting him. You're realizing that you're in a funk, but then she gets pregnant on her own.
We get pregnant in, I don't know, May
I mean,
or
not on her own.
June.
You were a part of that, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I was part of it. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
End of May, we get pregnant again, and we are like, she runs into me and she's like, "What is this?" And after she had, gotten the test, and I'm like,
Because
"Oh,
we have resolved to,
we're
we aren't
done.
it. We can't do it. Our bodies, our, eggs and fishes, this is not working.
Something isn't working." Yeah,
And so we adopted these embryos. This is the plan. And she gets pregnant.
yes, and this was
So
in May, and we are just like, "What are we doing?" So
were you pursuing another transfer at that time?
we were, yeah, we were ready to like, because when was that? March? Yeah,
So
March
2 months
transfer. And
later.
so usually they do, we were prepping for another one in August.
Okay.
And so we find out at the end of May that we're pregnant again. And we're like, okay, we're going to see how this goes. Go to a doctor's appointment, very end of June. So we were going on a trip right before this, or right after this, but right before we left for this trip, we went to a doctor's appointment, 9 week scan, and we're just like, all right, well, we know what it's gonna show, so we're prepped. It doesn't change anything. We've been prepped in the past, and it doesn't change anything. But anyway, we go in there and we're like, all right, and the lady's like, why are you guys so nervous? And then she looks and she's like, yep, I know why now. And she goes, let's go in there, let's figure it out, and then we'll go. Boom. She goes in, she does her thing, and like you can hear the heartbeat just boom, 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 boom. And we're like, we haven't heard that. And 188 was the heartbeat. This is 9 weeks. We
Yeah.
haven't seen that heartbeat since 7 years before with Hayden.
That's the
And we're
text I
like,
got. Those were like your exact words.
yeah, I mean, it
We
was
have
like,
not seen a heartbeat this strong in 7 years. Yeah.
and this is, right before going on a trip. And so we're like, we want this to be like it. And it's either in Lisa, we're going on this, week-long trip with her family, and we're like, we want to have fun, like we want to enjoy this. So like give us an answer, like either really great or
Hmm.
just let us do it now.
Shut it
Be
down.
done. And I mean, he let us enjoy it.
Mhm.
So had that heartbeat. We get back from the trip on July like 6th or something after the 4th. And about a week later, she starts to show some symptoms. And she had just told her family because, well, her like brothers and sisters and stuff, because she just they were gonna see. She was
Yeah.
gonna get a swimsuit, she was gonna show. And so we told them, and they're like, everybody's super pumped. It was exciting. It was really fun. And then a week when we get back, baby stopped growing at like 9 weeks and 4 days.
Mm.
It was basically the same size as it was when we last saw it. Um, no heartbeat. It was devastating once again. I mean, and it's not like you get it more experience with this stuff and it just gets easier.
No.
It actually like exponentially gets harder.
Yeah.
And at this point, Hayden knows. I mean, we're not trying to like, we weren't trying to hide anything from him. If he would have asked in the past, we would have told him. But this time we were real with him and basically, knew. So after this one, we get the doctor's like, hey, do you want to like get the baby tested? Like, do you want to see what the tests show and see
Hmm.
what issue there is? Got the genetic tests back, and baby was baby boy was very healthy, and um, Lisa's body had rejected him, um, which, gosh dang it, I did not see this coming.
Sorry.
Um, but and for her, whew, just I'm crying because not because of the baby, but because of just her and dealing with, you know,
It basically was like,
I
it's
wish
your
that it
fault.
was my body
Yep. Yep.
so that I could bear it. But
Yeah.
yeah, so she had to deal with that. And I'm sure for her that's so isolating and just awful. Um, I mean, luckily she has a group of girls that are just absolute rock stars.
They are.
Um,
They're special.
between giving notes and calling and um, texting, or just when she wants to lock herself in the bedroom and turn the lights off, show up at the house, and just super cool.
Yeah.
But so that was middle of July. I'm gonna compose myself here. That was the middle of July of this past year. And August comes along, and this is the very end of August. And somebody reaches out and they're just like, have you guys ever thought of surrogacy? And we're like, I mean, no, because we can't afford anything else anymore. I mean, it's adoption is its own, financial beast, but
Well,
surrogacy
because
is
you are, had to pay to adopt the embryos, you're having to pay for the transfer situation. I mean, because it isn't just
because it's IVF.
a lot easier to just do it, to just
Yeah,
make
it
a
would
baby.
be,
It would
yeah.
be easier. And so, yeah, there's all these costs involved in all the medical pieces that are involved. So at this point, you have embryos left, but you just basically got told that it's her body that cannot do it. And so now it's like,
Yes. This
well,
part was like, okay, God,
yeah, yeah.
now we need clear and like we need evidence. Like, what are we supposed to do? And so all of July and August, we're just kind of like, we're just kind of coasting through life. I mean, this is where a good friend of mine had to call me out because I'm coaching football, and I am like, and I'm not. you know, doing anything crazy, but I'm also not myself.
Not yourself. But
I'm basically not lashing out in a super negative way, but I am yelling and getting into my athletes more than I have. And
he knew it wasn't you.
it
And
wasn't, it's, and that's not my personality. I mean, I'm not a quiet human, but I'm also not a screamer and yeller in a
oh,
negative way, or, getting
yeah.
in people's faces in a way that, I try to do things that glorify God. And I do that by encouraging and by building each other up, and throwing arms around guys, and, loving on them a little bit better than that. And I wasn't. And so he called me out, and then we had lunch together, and basically he's like, hey,
Yeah.
real honest with me, like, you need to cool it out. And he knew why. I mean, he knows that I was trying to bear a lot of it, which is unfair to people I work with, the kids. It's unfair to hate
How,
them because
how do you not do it though? So like how do you not maybe I need the advice, but like I mean carrying it all is it feels like one, probably feels like your job as the man and as the husband. How did you fight or do you continue to fight? And then we'll get to the other stuff. But the not being bitter, not being angry
well, or just like
or cold.
seeing other people who can pop babies out like crazy and super fast was hard. And it's just, and people look at us and they're like, well, it almost makes me think that that we're like selfish, or that we're just like bitter about that, and we're not. And that part was hard. And people have come to us and been like, they don't know how to talk to us, they don't know how to act around us, they don't know how to do certain things, and we don't want that. Like, this is our issue. We know this. And we've gotten to a point now where we love that people are have babies. Yeah, we want that, but we also we love those people, and we love that they're able to do that. But
And
it
their
is
babies. I
hard.
watch you with my grandbaby. Like you just there's a it's like bothness, you know, but sometimes you are having to fight for the bothness harder because sometimes it just happens to you. Sometimes joy and hard or hope and grief coexist and you're like that's really weird and it like rumbles up in you, but sometimes you have to choose it. And so sometimes I think you're having to choose the both of, hey, I can be really happy for you and I can still want it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there definitely have that. But mom, when I was in college, I think it was probably geared toward baseball at that point. But she told me that when I am praying, like, you need to like visualize, like, laying down everything that you're struggling with and dealing with and all of that, that visualize that you are dropping that off at the cross. And that's what I do. I mean, I mean, the visualization in my head is something I feel like I'd have to paint. I've probably seen a picture of this somewhere, but it's basically like a big cross on top of the hill on Calvary. And I'm just like, there's sunset behind it. And I like
Is this a
literally,
tattoo? I think I'm hearing a tattoo
I
coming.
would love that,
Yeah.
but tattoos are, are
But
not
also
free.
expensive.
If they were free, hell
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'd be all about that. But so anyway, that's my visualization. And that's what helps me. Um, it doesn't always help, because sometimes my pride and stupidity gets in the way, where I'm just like, no, I want to deal with this way. Let me be mad, and I have to fight that. I mean, it's a thing that there's I have some anger, and I don't if I don't deal with it right, then it's not good.
Mhm.
But it's also, I know that, and luckily I have people to that call me out on it.
Mhm.
Because if I didn't, I think there'd be an issue. And Lisa's really good about like, hey, Hayden doesn't need to. I mean, when he was first born, she would tell me like, hey, he thinks you're yelling at him. Like you're, and I'm like, well, I'm not. I'm loud. And
You're
so I've
really
had to
loud.
like over the years, I've had to like tone myself down. And that I do think about
That
that.
is a family trait. But yeah,
I'm aware. Yeah.
yeah.
It's a strong
No,
gene.
I do it too, and you have to learn your audience a little bit, but also sometimes you feel things that you're like, I don't know where that came from. Like, I don't know why I feel that way. Or, I mean, I pride myself on being able to communicate, but sometimes when it comes to my feelings, it takes me some time to articulate. I know I feel this way. I know what you said upset me, but it may take me 48 hours to know why it hurt me or
Yeah.
why it upset me. Or so
Sometimes
it's
my words get
hard.
caught like through a screen. And then so like some of the things that I want to say get stuck on the other side of it where I'm like, ah, I didn't want to say that. I meant to say this with it.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
that's yeah, communicating that way is not always easy.
Yeah. Okay. What about as a marriage? How do you fight for it not being divisive? This is a huge cause of divorce, miscarriages and infertility. How do you fight for that?
Well, I would never think about it with her. I mean, I say that, but I am crazy about Lisa. I am, and I think people know that just by watching me. But um, I mean, it's hard though. I mean, it is when you see somebody who's you know down and often and knows that too, and it's just one of those that when we if you know when neither of us are with the Lord because without him we're in trouble and this could easily cause conflict. I mean if I was resentful it could be really hard
Hmm.
and vice versa. I mean she has done literally like test after test after test after test after test and I've had to do like one thing
Hmm.
and
All of
it,
it's on her. Yeah, so much of the burden is on
yeah.
her.
And I mean, the fact that she has to try to carry the baby or
Mhm.
had this is all past tense now. She's not going to be pregnant again. Um,
Yeah.
but then it could be if I was that way, it could be bad.
If you
But
were giving advice to other couples that are just now walking it out, I mean, what do you think you've done well as a couple? What would you say?
I would say that the biggest thing is that be honest with each other, love each other super well, be empathetic. It's just understand that her feelings and your feelings or his feelings and your feelings are very real and also very different. um I mean I know that for me she didn't realize that I was affected so much because I did try to hide it for the first 3 or 4 years of this and not hide it necessarily but more like try to like I'm this tough macho guy I don't need that um but knowing that I had um, other people to help call me out helped me, but also she needed to know that I was affected, and
Mhm.
then we coming together and talking about that
Mhm.
was a big deal, and just because it a allowed us to really dig deep into that conversation, and also b it just kind of made us closer.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, when you're married, you're like, well, I know everything about this person. It's like, yeah, you do, but you don't always know what everybody's feeling.
No, you
And
can't. And so that's I
you
think
assume, but
the key is empathy doesn't have to be I understand because I feel it wouldn't matter if I met another widow that had 8 kids that some of them were adopted or I, we might not feel exactly the same way or our marriage might not have been exactly the same or and so if I was looking for that to be the people who love me well, I say this all the time, then I wouldn't have that, right? I don't have very many friends that are in the same boat. But the people who've actually loved me super well have just shown up, have just insisted that they get in
yeah,
front of me. Or I had friends this week, I can hardly talk about this, that out loud at a restaurant read their Barnabas out loud to me. And I just sat there and cried, like, why they encouraged me the way that they did. Like, ugh, I don't deserve that. And I mean, it just is overwhelming. But you need those people, and they don't, not a single one of them is a widow. One of them has never been married. The others have very different stories than me. That's not what empathy requires. And so I think if anything, these stories, yours and mine, have made me be more of the person to show up in the hard. Um,
Well, I think
Instead
it.
of, I don't know what to say. I just might not say anything,
Well, I
you know,
think that the more you talk about it, the more you realize you're not alone.
for sure.
And I mean, everybody's got a story, and everybody's got. That's what's so great about this podcast is that you get to hear all of these people who, you know, they've been through this, and this, and then they
Yeah.
still are taking progressive steps. I mean, they are still, you know, giving it all to him.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's the goal of this is that he's in charge. This is his story. It's not mine. Once we took a back seat is when this story really kind of took off.
Yeah. Okay,
And
so let's go there. The next piece. I mean, she's told your body can't do this. You won't do this.
well, in the meantime, a friend had reached out and said, like, hey, are you interested in a surrogate? And we're like, well, I don't know about that. You know, we'll see what happens when we get there. She goes in for maybe our next like transfer talk and like figure out what it is. And they do the tests. And he's just like, well, after your last loss, this is the doctor who's one of like most renowned in Kansas City area. And he's said, all right, your only option is surrogacy. And so we're like, okay. And then that same person comes back and says, well, God has led us to this where, and this is her and her husband, um, led us that we need to be doing this. Like we are supposed to be your surrogate. And Lisa and I are both like, are you sure? Like we didn't really know. And so we went and met with them. And because really there's a time where you're doing these shots and things where I don't know if I can say this, but I'm going to say it. You can't have sex for a certain
Oh,
period of
right.
time and like a long time, a couple months. And so I'm like meeting with this dude and I'm like, all right, are
You
you
know what you're saying. You
yes, I was
know?
like, this is,
Yeah.
and we went to them and we had a list. We were like, all right, it's this, and this. And I said, and for you, it's this one. Like, are you sure? And he goes, apparently it was his idea. We found out that it was not his wife's. And to me, that's just like,
Yeah.
it's so like, it gave us hope when we hadn't felt hope. So, um,
Yeah. I don't know exactly like where I was, but I got this message and David's response was, gosh, if that ain't the church, be in the church. Because man, holy cow. Like the sacrifice
Well,
of
and
both of
yeah,
them, you know?
yeah. And
We
I
can't
mean,
even show up when somebody's sad because we are afraid, you know,
yeah. Well,
let alone.
and people are really bad to say things when they don't, not that they're bad. People are afraid to say things when stuff is bad. And the good thing about a lot of people in our life is that we've had a significant amount of people who have used their words and used their talents to build us up.
Yeah,
And this person and this family is no different. I mean, it's been a roller coaster, but we at least feel at this point like we're like, okay, this is answered questions. This is why we knew we had to adopt. This is why we knew we needed embryos. This is why we blah blah blah. I mean, things are lining up for
it
us to
started to make
where
sense. You just didn't know it wasn't going to be her body.
well, and yeah, it was not not the sense that we thought, but
Oh,
it
right,
was what he thought, and
right.
that's that's way more satisfying and way more just easier to take. I mean, again, just like mom said, like just lay it all down. And she texted me today because I'm talking about other things, and she's just like, "Are you trusting?" And it's like, well, no, I'm not, because it's money, and no, I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm gonna continue to stress. But
Because
she,
I think it's a continual, like, I can't think of, I'm drawing a blank. I was thinking this a minute ago, but there's the passage about taking all of our thoughts captive. It's 2 Corinthians 10:5 about taking our thoughts captive. And I used to visualize too that whatever this is that I'm dwelling on, I'm gonna put in this cage. It was a locked cage, like captive, like like a jail, and put my thoughts there, and I'm making that thought obedient to Christ, like that passage says. And but sometimes you have to keep doing it, like you come back to the same thought or the same thing that you have to keep laying down. And I mean, that's I
well,
if I have to
it's
take up
just
my
the
cross
enemy.
every day, I may have to lay down something every day too,
Yeah,
you know?
it's it's the enemy constant. I mean, it's like full on armor every morning when you wake up. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard. I mean, and really, if it starts creeping into your brain, and which it does, it's there's just a lack of trust and a lack of belief in what he's told us.
Yeah.
And we battle that.
Yeah.
It's one of those where we constantly having to pick each other up and build each other up, knowing like, all right, this is what he's told us over the last 5 years. Like, this is where we're at. This is why. Let's go.
Well, and
And
practically, there are still needs that happen in obedience. And so that's where it gets hairy. Like, okay, yeah, I feel like God told me to go adopt 5 kids, but then should I have like been able to financially just like taking care of that? In a lot of ways, God did provide that, but then also other people. And so that feels weird because it's like,
yeah,
well, not everybody else was supposed to be obedient. We feel like we're supposed to, do this ourselves. This is very, I'm sure that's very American mindset that like,
yeah,
God said it, I'm going to bootstrap my way through this. And the reality is, there are people who also want to serve and meet needs in ways that they can't carry your baby for you, and they can't, give you a baby. And so this is a need. And so that's one of the things that I don't think you even realized, that everything costs. And even though a person comes voluntarily, there are significant costs. So that's a big need. And
yeah,
I think we have to say that out loud, that there is a need, and we're going to come up with some ways to, allow people to be a part of the story. But this is one of the ways I wanted people to hear out loud that this is a need, that you guys, I mean, really big picture, need like $15,000. I
yeah.
mean, let's just say it out loud. And so
Well, and yeah, and it's not like, I mean, we are. You should see our Excel spreadsheet
I
that
know
we're
I've seen it
budgeting
before.
on. I mean,
I know. Yeah.
it
You guys are very transparent and very responsible. Like literally, you had me come over one time to look at your budget because you were, I don't know, questioning something. And I mean, that's really
yeah.
vulnerable. I wouldn't do that. Okay. I'm not showing you my
Well, I'm
spending.
a
So
teacher, so there's
I
not a lot
know, but
there.
that's vulnerable. That's really transparent. And so I love that about you guys. I mean, that's probably even more so her, like,
Oh
because
yeah,
she's organized, but also like, I need to show you, this is what we're trying to do. You guys aren't being extravagant or foolish, but you feel like this is what God told you to do, but you also want to take care of the surrogate appropriately.
yeah,
And so there are some ways to, serve them. And maybe as a result of this, people will reach out to me, and maybe they don't want to give you money, but maybe we are able to, even gift cards and things that we can do to take care of her as this gets to be real.
yeah,
And as and that's part two. We will get to where we can talk openly about some of that. And but this is really happening. And so the steps are happening, and I mean, a transfer is going to take place. And so this financially is a need. Other things are, people can be praying for you guys and praying
yes,
for that other family,
both, yeah.
continually praying for the marriages involved.
The
Uh,
kids involved,
well, say that again.
the kids involved,
Yeah, yeah,
the little
kids
kids
and
involved.
families and marriages and all the things that the enemy hates are I mean, unity in your church, unity in your marriage, unity in your families. The enemy sucks at,
Yeah,
I mean, just wants to kick all that stuff down.
yeah,
And so even the doubt potentially that could be creeping in on both sides, I don't know.
for sure. Yes.
So anyway, I mean, I just cannot wait to see how the church big C, the church acts like the church in this.
Yeah.
Um, and really just can be inspired by, obviously not everyone's going to get to go, hey, I'd like to carry someone else's baby. But how do we show up in hard? Um, is really really important. And awkwardly, like, let's just make it weird the way that we show up when people are struggling. And hopefully we can get to where we receive it well too, and your friend didn't tick you off, but you know that he loves
Yeah.
and cares about you, and he also understands grief in his own way. And
Yeah.
so I mean, he had some credits in the bank.
Yep.
And so I just think there's a lot of ways that we can be the church better for each other in light of what we've been through. So,
Yeah.
okay, well, any other 2 cents? Well, anything you would say to the masses, the masses, like the 5 people that listen.
There's a little bit more than that.
Okay, good.
But no, I think that just if you feel the nudge, listen. Um,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's not always easy. Even if you can't control it on your own, you can't feel it on your own. You just know that if you feel the nudge, he's trying to get something rolling.
Obedience is definitely not easy. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, something doesn't scare me a little bit. Is it any good? Is it worth it, you know? Because I mean,
it's it's hard.
I
I
want to
mean,
be a
it
little
is.
bit scared to do what God asks because that makes it bigger than me. I
Well,
couldn't
and
do it on my own.
we've actually switched roles over the last probably 20 years, but
You
I'm
and I.
kind of a rule follower here. And so if I feel like it's not possible or I can't, which I've proven that what I think is impossible is not. But um, I just I just know that it's one of those that he's going to take it. He's going to control it. He's got full on like this is on him. It's
Yeah.
his plan, not ours.
Yeah. And there are good plans even in hard. So I think that that's the thing is he's just still good. And I know that's a really overused word, and so that's not my favorite word, but it's very biblical if we use it the right way. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
he
think
is
about that a lot. How
still good.
we are so not,
Right.
and he
Right.
is.
At the core, you know.
Because we think we're good people, but
Right. We
yeah,
also think pizza is good, or we use that word so messed up. And so, yeah, it's just to see that he is good, and capable. I just sent that to, we have a cousin with a kid going through something, and I was praying today, like, and told her, he's good and capable. Like, he can. Like,
yeah,
and I know that. And I think I want people to know that I still pray like that. That
yeah,
even though he didn't answer my story the way I wanted, that I still ask big and I still believe that he's good and
yeah,
able. So, and sometimes you say it to remind yourself of what
yeah,
is true. So,
yeah.
yeah.
When I don't think that he would switch places. I think that
Thought,
no,
yeah.
talking Scott,
Yeah.
he's not coming now. That's his place.
No, yeah.
He
Yeah, no.
doesn't want to be
He
back
wouldn't yeah, and that helps to know that he's okay, you
for
know.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no. For sure. And really, I mean, even some of the, I know we can't like decide what heaven's like, but the idea that this baby whisperer gets to hold your babies.
trust us. Yeah, we use that.
Yeah. And so I don't know if that's really how it works,
I
or
know.
what it's like before they come down here, because I know that they're gods before and after. And but man, I just have to think that he's okay, they're okay.
Yeah,
And really that God's good, and his way is full. That our stories are still full.
yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
and this is how he's showing who he is. He needs to keep showing off.
In a temporary situation.
Correct.
Know?
Yeah,
In this blip on the radar, that's really what we're doing, is
yeah,
we're just pointing the way. And so the circumstances, it is what it is, because this is just this little piece. So I
yeah.
have to keep that perspective. But okay, well, thanks for letting yourself get a little sappy, and and talking with me. So I think God will use it, and I'm excited to see what happens with it.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much for listening. If you have or know someone with an inspiring story, you can apply to be a guest at ordinarygrit.com. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram at Ordinary Grit Podcast to get to know me and my guests.